Adrian could still hear her laughter, and her soft smile still flashed before his eyes, and his fingers could still feel the soft velvet of her skin, and the elastic curls of her gorgeous hair recurred in his memory. The man woke up, but lay in bed for a long time, reliving his dream, which he had dreamed almost every night for several years. It had been more than 10 years since he had broken up with Maria, but he never forgot his love for a minute, and the pain of the separation had been hurting him more and more lately. Suddenly, he remembered their first meeting vividly. Right after high school, Adrian entered medical university, which he had dreamt of since his early childhood. His happy parents bought him an inexpensive car to celebrate his enrollment. They were not rich. They did not hold any high positions, just a simple engineer and a teacher. But they could still buy a gift from their savings for their son, who succeeded in enrolling in a prestigious medical university. Maria, a girl from a very wealthy family, was on the same course as Adrian. While her parents were successful and well-known entrepreneurs in the city and could send their daughter to any university, even abroad, Maria had chosen the local medical university and entered on her own, without any help from her parents. Adrian arrived a little late for his first lecture. Almost all the seats in the auditorium were taken. There was only one seat left, next to a girl who was focused on writing something in her textbook. "Do you mind if I sit next to you?" the boy asked. The girl raised her head and looked at him. That was the moment Adrian realized that he had fallen in love, completely and irrevocably. The depths of her green eyes seemed to burn into his heart. The girl took a strand of her curly brown hair out of her face and nodded. "Sure, have a seat. My name is Adrian. Maria." They didn't say anything else, but during the entire lecture, the boy felt as if he was being burned by the girl. His heart skipped a beat. There was a noise in his ears, and he had not heard a word of what the professor had said that first day at the university. As the students were leaving the auditorium, Adrian walked up to Maria. "Can I walk you home?" "Thank you, but no need." Maria was embarrassed. "My father sent his driver to pick me up." Adrian felt awkward, terribly uncomfortable. Indeed, Maria stood out among all of their fellow students. She had everything: brand name clothes, expensive jewelry, accessories. He shouldn't really hope for anything with such a posh girl who is absolutely above his social status. The guy quickly turned away and was about to leave, feeling ashamed. But suddenly, Maria stopped him. "Adrian, no offense, please. Tomorrow, I'll ask my dad not to send a car for me, and you and I can take a walk together, okay?" And it was as if he was soaring with happiness. How little he needed to be happy. From then on, every day he walked Maria home, or rather, to the huge, luxurious mansion in the center of the city where she lived with her parents. As the young people quickly bonded and could not live even a day without each other. Barely parting at her house, they called each other in half an hour and talked as if they hadn't seen each other for a week. Adrian's parents watched their son's first love with a smile. He was completely immersed with it. However, the relationship with Maria did not prevent the boy from doing well as a student. Let him date this girl, parents decided. The main thing is to finish the university, and then we can think about marriage. They liked their son's girlfriend very much. She was beautiful, intelligent, and motivated. But the girl's parents had a very different attitude to Adrian. The father, imperious and rigid, upon learning of his only child's feelings, flatly ordered, "Maria, put that Adrian out of your mind. I don't need a penniless son-in-law. And his parents, poor beggarly people. Forget about him. I have big plans for you, particularly for your marriage. "But Dad!" Maria looked at her father pleadingly in tears. "I love him, and I'm not going to get married yet. I still have almost 4 years of university left. By the way, if you get married successfully, you won't need to study. You'll get a good life anyway. With a good, wealthy husband, you won't have to work, just like your mother. She has stayed at home all her life, taking care of you and herself, not lacking anything. I mean, what's wrong with that kind of life?" Dad said, "But I want to be a doctor. I want to help people. This is what I've dreamt of since I was a child." "This conversation is over. Soon you won't have time to study." Maria ran to her room in tears and called Adrian to relay her conversation with her father. The boy was extremely indignant. "What kind of nonsense is this? Your father has no right to decide for you. Don't get upset. We'll figure something out. After all, we can secretly get married and then just let them know it as a fait accompli." Adrian had no idea at the time how inhumane and cruel his beloved's family would be. Well, it's time to get up and go to work. The man took a shower, had breakfast, and went to work at the hospital where he had worked for 10 years now since graduation. As it happened every day, his favorite job completely captivated him, and all the bitter thoughts and hard memories just flew out of his head. Adrian really loved his job. He was proud of each of his recovered patients and experienced every failure, every tear of an incurable patient. Today, a huge crowd had already gathered in front of his office. After saying hello to everyone at once, the man entered his office and immediately began to examine patients. By the end of the visiting hours, there were no fewer people in line, but it was necessary to go to the surgical department to prepare for the scheduled surgeries. The man looked at the crowd with regret, apologized, and, inviting them to come back the next day, went to the surgical department of the hospital. Only 3 minor surgeries were scheduled for today, but he still had to stay at the hospital until the evening in case there was an emergency situation that required urgent surgical intervention. It was getting late in the evening. Adrian tiredly filled out medical histories and prescribed treatments and medications. Suddenly, a nurse entered his office. "Mr. Adrian, you're needed in the surgical department urgently. Car accident. An injured woman in critical condition." Adrian quickly went to the pre-op room, changed his clothes, and saw a gurney being wheeled through the door with a young woman lying on it. Her entire body and face were covered in blood. With the experienced eye of a professional, he examined the victim and identified the most injured parts of her body and ordered, "Anesthesia. Let's take care of the fractures first." For several hours, Adrian worked without looking at the face of the patient. Finally, all the necessary actions were done, and the man said tiredly, turning to the woman who underwent surgery, knowing that under the influence of anesthesia, she wouldn't hear anything anyway. "That's it, darling. You'll be able to run soon." Suddenly, he froze and was silent. Only now he looked closely and recognized his Maria in the victim, his beloved, whom he saw every night in his dreams. God, what happened to her? When Maria was taken to the recovery room, Adrian decided to stay on the night shift and wait for the girl to come to her senses. It was past midnight when the woman opened her eyes and asked with parched lips, "Can I get something to drink?" Adrian, who was sitting beside her, leaned over her and dabbed her lips with a damp napkin. "You'll have to wait for a while, Maria. You aren't allowed to drink yet." Maria hardly turned her head, and when she saw Adrian, she cried out softly, "Adrian, is that you? Where am I?" "It's me, Maria, and you're in the hospital. You got in a car accident. You underwent the surgery. You have several fractures and a minor concussion, but you'll get better soon." Suddenly, the woman cried, "Why, Adrian? Why did you save me? He's going to find me anyway and finish what he started." "What are you talking about, Maria?" the woman wondered. "Who will find you? Why and what will he finish? Are you in danger?" "Yes," cried Maria. "My husband has decided to get rid of me." Adrian suddenly calmed down, pulled himself together, and resolutely said, "Tell me what's going on in your life, about your husband, and why he wants to get rid of you. Tell me everything." Maria obediently began her story, and she spoke for nearly 2 hours. Throughout the story, Adrian held her hand and stroked her soothingly, but mentally, he shuddered at the monstrous cruelty, and his hair stood on end for all that his poor Maria had endured. In the distant past, when Adrian and Maria decided to get married secretly and arranged it over the phone, Maria didn't show up at the university the next day. The guy kept calling his beloved, but her phone was unavailable. Finally, quite worried, barely waiting for the end of the lectures, Adrian rushed to Maria's house. But he was not even let in through the gates. The girl's father just came out and harshly said, "You don't have to come here anymore. Maria is getting married in a couple of days and going on a honeymoon. You will never see her again. If you will be too persistent, your loved ones will be harmed. There are not too many parents to lose them one by one. Think about it. My daughter is a small and obedient girl. She agreed with my reasoning and accepted the groom's proposal." It was incomprehensible how Adrian survived the next few months. It was like a delusion or like a sci-fi movie where reality gets mixed up with fantasy. It was only once that he saw his beloved when she and her father came to the university to drop out. Then, out of desperation, he ran up to them. But Maria turned away indifferently, and her father showed the boy pictures from his daughter's wedding, so it was true. His heart continued to ache with sadness. But Adrian calmed down and pulled himself together, deciding never to think of Maria again, although in his dreams, he still loved her. That day, when the young people were talking on the phone about a secret marriage, Maria's father overheard the conversation at the door and immediately made a decision. He went into his daughter's room, took the phone away, and disconnected it. "So, you decided to go against my will. Fine, I wanted to be nice, but apparently you don't understand normal language. Then I'll describe to you in detail what happens next. Tomorrow, you'll go to the university, and after lectures, or perhaps in the morning, you'll rush to apply for a marriage license. In about a week, your fiancé will be found dead. Nothing unusual. On the way home late at night, some thugs robbed and beat him, and the thugs beat the guy so badly that he didn't survive. You will go to the funeral and mourn your loved one, and then you do what I say anyway. Of all the things that can happen, you can remove the unnecessary step, the death of the groom. You just have to agree with me right away. It's up to you." And the man left the room. Maria sat shocked by her father's words and realized that she was the only one who could save Adrian. The girl did not doubt that his father's threats would be carried out into reality. After spending the whole night without sleep, crying out all her feelings and emotions, in the morning, Maria gave her father a positive answer. "Good girl," smiled her father with satisfaction. "You made the right choice, and believe me, you won't regret it. I love you, you're my only daughter, and I'm doing all this for your future. Remember my words, you'll thank me for it." A week later, Maria was introduced to her future husband, the son of her father's partner, the handsome and flamboyant Sebastian. And a month later, they were married. Sebastian was a completely spoiled young egotist. He openly despised his wife, changing mistresses with enviable consistency. After a while, he discovered another passion, an unhealthy passion for card games. Sebastian lost at the card table huge sums of money. Sometimes it also happened that he won. Then, he was in high spirits and even spoke kindly to his wife. But it was especially hard for Maria when he lost. Then, her husband took out all his anger and frustration on his wife. Soon, Sebastian was not stopping at humiliation and moral abuse. After each unsuccessful game, he would get drunk and beat his wife. One day, Maria decided to tell everything to her father and ask for help. Her father's response morally crushed the unhappy girl. "There is no need to speak ill of Sebastian. I see him every day at the office. He is a very decent young man and a talented businessman. I've already made him my deputy. And you, instead of complaining about your husband, It's high time you had a baby and took care of my grandson. You suffer from idleness, so that's why you make up slander about your husband." Now, Maria realized that her life had turned to hell, and she would never get out of this nightmare. She would have to suffer and agonize until she died. There was no way out. After 5 years of endless marital torture, Maria's father died. At first, the young girl breathed a sigh of relief. Now she could get a divorce. No father, so there's no danger for Adrian anymore. But it wasn't like that. Sebastian, according to his father-in-law's will get the whole business with one condition. He would be the owner only as long as he was married to Maria. Even from the other world, her father managed to destroy her hopes for happiness. Except that Sebastian did not want to live with his hated wife, and he also did not want to divorce and lose money. More and more money went into gambling, as into the abyss. Then the man came up with a brilliant plan. From his point of view, simple and inexpensive. A car accident. He had a wife, and suddenly his wife was gone, and he is not suspected. He would have a 100% alibi and complete freedom. That's how Maria got into the car accident. Maria was silent, and Adrian sat speechless for several minutes, pondering what he had heard. "My God, Maria, how much grief you had to endure. But you are safe now. I'm here for you, and I won't let anyone hurt you." Suddenly, there was some noise in the hallway. Adrian got up and left the ward, promising a frightened Maria to sort it all out and come right back. At the entrance, there were 3 strong athletic men with gangly looks, trying to force their way through the guards. "What's going on here?" Adrian asked sternly as he approached. "Who are you, and what do you guys want?" "We need to know about the woman who was brought here after the accidents," replied one of the men. Suddenly, a plan popped into Adrian's head, exactly when it all coincided so well. She died on the surgery table. Her family should come to the morgue in 2 days for identification. There will be an autopsy tomorrow. There was a look of obvious relief on the faces of the thugs. They apologized for the noise and left. The nurse who heard everything asked in shock, "Doctor, is the patient really dead?" Adrian took the nurse to the procedure room, briefly described the situation, and asked for help in silence. The young girl, who loved melodramas, felt very sorry for the unfortunate patient and immediately agreed to help with the doctor's plan. Early in the morning, a body covered with a sheet was wheeled out of the ward where Maria lay on a gurney and taken to the morgue. The pathologist, a university friend of Adrian and Maria's, immediately understood the problem and offered a solution. In the morgue was still the unidentified, unclaimed body of a homeless woman. The body was disfigured, so it was impossible to identify anyone in it. That's why it was decided to show this body under the name of Maria, and so they did. The allegedly grief-stricken husband took the body in a coffin, never even looked at it, and buried it. Adrian quit the hospital. He had long been invited with a promotion to the distant resort town. With the help of one of his rescued patients, a representative of the authorities, Adrian was able to marry Maria under different documents, and after marriage, his wife took his last name. And so, the couple's tracks were lost, but no one was ever looking for them. Sebastian was happy and contented. He was officially considered a widower, but the passion for gambling very soon led Maria's ex-husband first into bankruptcy, then to poverty, and finally to prison cell when, play at least once more, he tried to rob a store and kill the guard. There, behind bars, Sebastian died before he could be released. Adrian and Maria lived in love and harmony all their lives until their old age on the seashore, raising 4 children.